from Etobicoke North.
Thank you, Speaker. A privilege, of course, to speak on this Opposition Day motion, particularly as a physician parliamentarian speaking on a bill regarding health care. I have to, at the outset, Speaker, say that when the NDP had to, for example, diminish the healthcare system of the province of Ontario, whether it was by laying off workers, whether it was by closing a very significant number of beds, they at least did so reluctantly, in the sense that it was perhaps a fiscal consideration, a money consideration. I remember graduating from the University of Toronto Medical School once upon a time when the NDP was last in power. And one of the brilliant moves they made was to actually shut down, close, reduce the number of medical school spaces. Because they thought, well, how best can we improve healthcare in this province by reducing the number of doctors that it produces locally? And of course, we're perhaps still paying the price for that particular move. But at least, Speaker, when they did it, I think they felt a little bit reluctant, maybe even guilty and remorseful. Now, on the other hand, you get the Conservative Party, progressives as they are so called, where their general sort of, I guess you could say, goal or ambition is to create everything into a profit center. Whether it's universities, whether it's the 407 highway, whether it's, for example, water inspection, nuclear inspection, you name it. That's the game of the Conservative Party, best exemplified by the Honourable Donald J. Trump right now in the United States. Take whatever public asset there is and let's turn it into a private enterprise. And that's, by the way, known as privatizing the gains and socializing the losses. So when they compare 10,000 nurses to hula hoops, as the former Premier of the day, Conservative Premier, did, and was excellent for nursing care, unfortunately in Texas and in Dubai, not in the province of Ontario, they do it willfully. They are very pleased to actually diminish publicly rendered, publicly offered services so the slack can be taken up by private enterprise. Now, that's been kind of the history of the Conservative Party, or the Conservative movement, or the Republican Party in general. Now, to his credit, or to his, let's say, image creation, self-image creation, the current leader of the opposition, of the Conservative Party, and perhaps this is part of the difficulty that his own members and his own membership feel, that he's not really a real conservative. Because, frankly speaking, he seems to be going liberal light. I mean, it's Oscar Wilde who said once, Speaker, that no man can run from his past. But I can tell you, as a marathon runner, Patrick Brown sure is trying. Because when he served under the Right Honourable Stephen Harper, Prime Minister of Canada, for 10 years, almost every last move within the social program was to diminish, denude, and degrade, for example, whether it's healthcare, the environment, I mean, you name it, Speaker, and you follow this, I'm sure, as closely as anyone in this chamber. That's the, and not as close as Mr. Bailey, I'll accept that. But in any case, that is sort of the...
Member, please use writing names.
Bailey, what's your writing? Sarnia, thank you, thank you. The MPP for Sarnia. I'll accept that, Speaker. But having said that, I think that when you have a government, whether as we are now in power, when we say that healthcare and education are fundamental, yes, I think you can appreciate that there are stresses and strains on the margins, and perhaps not even on the margins, if, for example, regarding hallway medicine and some of the strains of a growing population and an aging population and diagnoses that are exploding, whether it's by the way personality disorders or autism or asthma and so on. But we are a government that really does honestly strive to better the healthcare system. Now, one of the paragraphs, one of the whereas clauses in this Opposition Day motion reads as follows. Whereas William Osler Health System, which operates Brampton Civic Hospital and Peel Memorial Centre for Integrated Health and Wellness, and it goes on from there, I have to bring to the attention to my honourable colleagues, especially from the third party, that the William Osler Health System also, by the way, includes Etobicoke General Hospital within my own riding. And with that, I would like to just share with you some of the expansion, because I know it will, because I visit there quite frequently, and I was there not too long ago with my honourable colleague from the Etobicoke Centre, as well as the Premier of the province and the health Minister, as well as the Minister of Infrastructure and Development, to announce and to welcome, and by the way, to wear hard hats and tour, the $400 million expansion going on locally at Etobicoke General Hospital of the William Osler Healthcare System. As an example, we are now going to be, once the full build-out happens, which I think it's probably taking a year or plus, it's going to quadruple, Speaker, the floor space, the footprint of the entire hospital. And this, as you can imagine, is a remarkable expansion and commitment and demonstration of our government's commitment to healthcare. Just as an example, folks in my riding, once this build-out happens, will no longer need to travel, for example, to Brampton to receive dialysis. I mean, as a doctor, I can tell you, obviously, whether it's type 2 diabetes left undertreated or unmanaged for years and years, which, as you will know, is the #1 cause of end-stage kidney disease or renal disease, requiring the pool filter, the kidney, to be actually, the work to be done by a machine externally as opposed to internally by the person's own native organ. They would have to travel all the way to Brampton for that dialysis. Whereas we now have a few dozen dialysis units which will be housed locally. Of course, Speaker, ideally, treat your sugar, treat your blood pressure, stay well, go get family doctor checkups, etc., so you don't end up needing to have kidney failure and dialysis. But if you do reach that stage, you'll now be able to receive that therapy locally. Similarly, we have a new cardiorespiratory, an entire unit that's being created in the William Osler system of Etobicoke General Hospital. What does that mean? Folks who have, for example, increasing things like tuberculosis, chronic obstructive lung disease, emphysema, and of course good old asthma, which 2 million Canadians have, and rising, despite the fact that we have, by the way, reduced coal-fired generation in this province. And if I might, Speaker, for a moment, I don't know if you folks know what's going on in the city of New Delhi right now in India, but apparently the smog, the pollution is so bad recently, I think just last week in New Delhi, that they actually closed the schools so that folks are basically allowed to hide indoors. And United Airlines, perhaps amongst other airlines, has actually stopped all flights going into New Delhi because of the air pollution. Now, having said that, I bring that up because that is part of the reason, part of the inspiration, I suppose, to actually close down coal-fired generation in the province of Ontario, so we don't actually experience air quality at that level. Similarly, again, at the William Osler system, Etobicoke General Hospital, we'll have a new maternal and newborn unit. We need more voters, Speaker, so we're happy that that's going to happen in my own great riding of Etobicoke North. And perhaps the crown jewel that will come to Etobicoke General Hospital, we have a brand spanking new, I think it looks like 2.5 times the size, maybe larger than what's current there, emergency room. Hopefully to address some of these issues, which are real and which are increasing, of, as you called it, hallway medicine right here in Etobicoke. Similarly, Speaker, I think this government, given its track record of commitment to health care, whether it's talking about wait times, which no other government would even bother to measure, whether it's a reduction in wait times in terms of, for example, very needed surgeries, whether it's cataract or knee replacement, hip replacement. Speaker, as you will know, as has been said, the phrase in this legislature already, the greatest expansion of Medicare in a generation, which is now going to be OHIP Plus. As of January 1st, 2018, which is, by the way, imminent, a few weeks away, if you are under the age of 25, which means, by the way, probably minus 6 months to under the age of 25, medications, which, by the way, are now 4,400 medications. That list itself was just expanded by 10% from 4,000 to 4,400. 4,400 medications will be how much? Free. I repeat, free. Speaker, a can of cola is not free in this country, but medications for folks as I say, under the age of 25 will be free. And that is an incredible addition to the healthcare system of Ontario. Folks ask me, well, what about seniors? Well, by the way, if you're 65 years old and plus in this, or better, in this, in the province of Ontario, those medications are already free. And of course, the list continues to expand as new therapeutic trends, new diagnoses, new treatment options and regimens come down the pipeline. Speaker, as you will know, we are now committing something like $700 million in this fall economic statement to hospital services, and I salute the Minister of Health, who of course really wrestles with these issues on a day-to-day basis. We have a $200 million commitment for mental health services because, as he quite rightly says, there is no health without mental health. And we as physicians know, for example, when there's discussions in this chamber about, let's say, disabilities or let's say challenges, not all disabilities and not all challenges are visible. And we as doctors, as family doctors, know that very well. There was a thing in the press just recently about how even young students are facing more and more anxiety as they come across the challenges of life and schoolwork and so on. So we know that this is a clear and present threat, danger, requirement for the healthcare system in the province of Ontario. I'm very pleased to say that as a primary care physician, the government's going to be committing $250 million over the next 3 years for primary care health teams, because ideally the model of care is closer to home, closer to the community, keep you out of the emergency room or the urgent care centres, and certainly the primary and tertiary, quaternary level of healthcare, trauma centres and so on. We want you to get the care at home, as close to as possible to home. That's why, for example, as you may have, I'm sure you were paying attention, along with the MPP from Sarnia, who no doubt challenges attention level to you, Speaker, that we are committing 5,000 commitment of 5,000 new long-term care beds to the province of Ontario, and again to address in part the objections and the very real concerns that the NDP is bringing forward in this opposition day motion. So, Speaker, I would simply say that when the NDP closes beds, or when the NDP diminished health care in this province, as I said, I believe they did it reluctantly, remorsefully, with a sense of guilt, with a sense of, I guess you could say, a fiscal bind. When the Tories do it, they do it on purpose, because they are, as I said earlier, that's been the history of the Republican, Tory, right-wing kind of movements across the world. Let's privatize it. Let's turn it into a profit center. Let's socialize the losses and privatize the gains. I think that's partly why, by the way, we need to hear what the fourth party has to say, the Trillium Party. I think they're objecting to the fact that the leader of the opposition, despite being a marathon runner, cannot, as Oscar Wilde said, run from his own past, from the 8 years he spent under the Harper mandate. Just as an example, he had a chance for creating a national pharmacare strategy. They voted against that. They had an opportunity for creating a national autism strategy. He voted against that. But now, of course, election looming, he does feel the sort of pain of his voters and is very quickly switching stripes. But as you know, Speaker, with whether it's ads or the press themselves, he's being called on it. Because at the end of the day, you know, we're sort of saying, will the real Conservatives please stand up and be counted, or at least if you've got the guts, join the Trillium Party. So with that, Speaker, I have to say, as a physician, as a parliamentarian, as a father, dad, son, husband, I have to say that this government gets it. Yes, there are challenges on the fringes, or there are challenges, I shouldn't even say fringes, because of increasing population, increasing delivery of healthcare. By the way, the fact that healthcare is still, quote, free in this country, but all of those are things that we are attempting to wrestle. And with that, Speaker, I have to also acknowledge the presence of my nephew as a page, who's walking over there right now, Adam. Thank you, Speaker.